Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Podcast Demastered. I'm Chelsea, and I'm here with Wade as always. Oh, what a year this has been so far. Lots of stuff has happened. Lots of stuff in the entertainment industry. Lots of stuff, I guess, on our own lives related to nerdy things, from games we played to books we've read, things we have planned for the future.
Oh yes, it really has been something, and we're like, we're going to be entering in the last quarter of the year here pretty soon, which is just ridiculous to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
For sure.
And there's still plenty more to go on top of that. There's still games that need releasing. There's still books that got to come out. I got to get married later this year. Like, woo. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's things that I would love for us to discuss on the podcast, but they will have to wait for a later time, because we did a little intro in our last episode, because I'm sure most people may be aware that there are currently strikes going on, specifically regarding both the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. And so we just want to be supporting both of them and understanding that, there's a lot of change that's needing to happen in the film industry. And the only way to do that is to, do our small little part. And we're just not going to talk about some of these movies and shows that have come out recently, because they should be paid fairly and treated fairly.
Everybody deserves to be paid for the work that they do.
Yes.
So, and we are in support of that 100%. So it's going to happen on our end too.
For sure. Yeah. And then there's definitely lots of other issues that they have also been discussing as well in these. I mean, so when this episode comes out, I'm pretty sure nothing will have changed with that. It'll be 100 days since the WGA has been on strike. 100 days. And so you probably have heard a lot of these terms: WGA, SAG, SAG-AFTRA. We have the AMPTP going on. I think maybe we could give a little bit of a little intro. I am no expert on this. This is definitely research that I have done, but I can try to explain some of these things. I think obviously like going to these guilds like sites and stuff to get more information on the subject is the best way to go, and not just from anybody on Twitter who has their own opinion or stuff that's coming out, because there's been lots of rumors and stuff that have been spreading during this time. There's been lots of misinformation, so it's good to get from
always there. Check your sources, folks.
Yes.
Twitter especially is not the place to go if you want correct takes on things. Check the source. Always. And that's for anything. That's for the current strike situation. That's for everything. Always check your sources. Media literacy is extremely important, especially in today's day and age. And that's coming from a teacher. Thank you very much.
I was like, yes. We have the teacher speaking on this. Yes. For real. But I don't know. Some people might find this boring, but hey, I think this is important. So I think we'll talk briefly about this. So WGA, the first group we've talked about that's on strike, that stands for Writers Guild of America. So that's who they are. They're the writers. It includes not only screenwriters, both for TV and film, but actually also journalists as well. And various degrees of writing. There's, they're a labor union. So they're the big union that's standing up for all of these writers and that who are eligible to be a part of this group. Now, the other big group that is on strike is SAG-AFTRA, which actually stands for Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. So it represents performers and also broadcasters as well. And they are fighting for, yes, like we've already said, like fair wages. There's a lot of been talks about AI, both with writers and actors. AI has been a big contender because AI has become a demon in these talks.
I have said this to so many people, especially specifically in this last year, but like in the next year, we are going to see, I am sure we're going to see a wave of legislation trying to control the whole AI situation. AI can be very entertaining. It can be very fun, but it can also be extremely dangerous to not just like the health and wellness of people, but the world. Like, you got to get outside the box a little bit on that, but it can cause a lot of very scary problems very, very fast.
Yeah.
And the fact that some studios have been scanning like extras and stuff, like full bodies in, to digitally imprint them into a scene, without just, rehiring that person to come back and do it, and not paying the people to even do that in the first place.
or even
That is
fully
bizarre.
asking for their permission for
Or
doing that.
asking for permission, like that. Oh,
Yeah.
that is it. It's dumbfounding to me that people don't hear just that part and are just like, well, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want like strangers taking pictures of you in public. You do not want Warner Brothers or Disney throwing your likeness around in their movies.
Yeah. Forever.
Like yeah, forever, for all of time. Like that we don't want to go that route.
No. Yeah, I think that's just a weird, scary thing for real, especially, with the full scanning and everything. It's just stuff like, we've kind of, there's been some movies that have come out in the last couple of years where it's like, oh, it's so cool they recreated that person or made them younger and stuff. But then, like, I mean, these are just, it's everybody. There's been a lot of stuff that's come out about certain TV shows and stuff where they scanned everyone, but without that proper compensation and stuff. And that's been a huge deal with residuals. There's also stuff with, like, they're fighting for, like, with streaming, because definitely I think at the beginning of the pandemic, streaming became such a big deal with having all these movies released and stuff on streaming services instead of in theaters. And they had agreements for in theaters to get a certain amount of money for these actors, but there was nothing in place for streaming. So there was all this money coming in, but who do you think was getting it?
Scarlett Johansson all over again. She's leading the pack on this one. I don't know if she knows it, but
for sure. But kind of going back to, like, well, with screenwriting and stuff, AI has been in talks because, so I guess also talking about, like, that the writers and actors are both, like, on strike against a very specific organization, which is called the AMPTP, which is just kind of like an acronym that has been thrown around a lot, and it's kind of like, it's the big conglomerate thing, but it actually stands for something. It stands for the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. And it's basically the big, like, association that all these guilds negotiate with. It's like the big, like, umbrella for all the big studios that fall underneath it that abide by these standards to them. Which, yes, as we've already said, like, yeah, Warner Brothers, Disney, like, let's see, Paramount, Universal,
Paramount,
Netflix, Hulu, Sony, Fox, yeah, all these companies, bigger companies, and, like, Disney has a ton of other companies underneath it, so that includes all of them and everything that Warner Brothers and, yeah, Universal owns. It's all of them. Now, there's some, like, smaller independent studios that aren't, like, considered a part of this, and some of those independent studios, it's hard for me to find a full list, but I know that it has been mentioned that some of the independent studios that, like, that aren't under this group include, like, Lionsgate, A24, and Neon, as well as many others. And, yeah, so that's, like, the big group that they're fighting. It's, like, all these big movie studios, all these movies that have come out recently and stuff, they're probably by one of these big name studios. So, but I know there's been some cool movies, but we're not going to talk about them right now. We might release this episode.
We got to hold off on it too.
Yeah, because we're here with these writers and these actors. But so the writers, related to their AI situation, is that, like, producers and stuff, the higher ups and all this stuff, they wanted to use AI to
write the scripts, to write to get all that stuff done. They're like, I don't need people for that.
Yeah. And you're like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
No, we don't need AI taking over. Also, I'm just like, AI they're not humans. Where's that human emotion, those personal experiences, and, like, where's the AI getting its stuff from?
It all comes from somewhere. It's just a huge conglomerate of, like, what's come before, and it's just, I don't know, like, this is not the way to use it.
No.
This is not the way to use it.
And I am there with the writers. Like, I don't think it's even a hot take, is that you can't have a movie or a TV show without writing. You have to have that idea and that stuff come first. Like, you don't have anything if you don't have that. So.
Yeah, you can't, like, look down at your script or just your general outline of the show or TV, of the movie or anything, and just be like, okay, I can see where this is going. Oh, I can picture my actors doing. It's not.
Yeah, there's nothing for them without it. So.
And I think it has a lot to do with, like, well, these are not people that, like, you see. They're not heard from. They're like the quiet workers, in the industry, which is basically anybody but the actors, right? Yeah. Like, they're the writers. Even in the director, sometimes they're more on the actor side of things than the bajillion other people who work on the movie, because they're out in the spotlight promoting and working and stuff like that. So it's crazy that that these studios can be like, oh, if we just kind of like hang tight and like ignore them for long enough, like they'll come crawling back.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like they'll need that paycheck. So.
Which is just a cruel way to look at that. Like, yes, like it's also not that people don't want to work. They do. They just want to be respected and treated fairly and get, yeah.
It's not a big thing to think about. Like, it is not hard to want to go to work, to do something that you love to do, to be treated and paid for respectfully, and get to come home at the end of the day and be like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's any job. That's any job. Anybody has the potential to be treated poorly or not be not paid correctly for the time and work that you do. In a lot of those situations, there's tons of protections and laws in place for that. And a lot of jobs don't have that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, there's like this misconception too. I think especially with actors, but I think with writers too, like they're not all millionaires. Like they're not just rolling in their money being like, oh, we're not getting enough. No, some of these people are just barely getting by. Like not even considered potentially even middle class citizens. Like it's just they get paid so little and they just want to have enough to get by.
Yeah, because like it's like the writing and stuff, you know, they get paid for writing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they get residuals, it's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a joke. You go online and people are showing their paychecks. Oh, like I wrote this show. Like I wrote like a vast majority of the episodes of this TV show. And this was my check last week for that. It's like 15 cents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're like, this is a huge show that you like everybody has probably seen.
It's huge. Yeah. It's a huge show. It's not like this small little bitty thing. It's like this show's been on air for 15 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of crazy. But I think what's so interesting about this is like, I remember at least specifically with the writers, when the last writer's strike happened, like I remember it just being like a thing and not knowing too much about it. Maybe because I was
right. Because we were like
younger.
We weren't young, but like we were certainly not our age today.
Yeah. And I don't
remember when that was, but I remember it happening.
2000.
But I was more just like,
maybe?
I felt really bad about it. I was just like, oh, that's too bad. I hope everything works out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
not realizing like the effects that it could have.
Yeah. No, and I think too, when I was younger too, it was more of like, oh, which I think a lot of people feel this way too, is like, oh, that sucks. Like these writers on strike. Now I don't get my newest season of whatever show I was hoping to come out soon because nobody's working on it.
Yeah, that's the leverage.
Yeah.
That's the leverage.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I understand feeling bummed, you know, because there's plenty of cool stories that need to come out and stuff, but like people are behind these works, like regular people, you know, they're working hard. This is their job. They just, you know, yeah, like you said, it's their leverage and stuff too. But yeah, so like the writers have been on strike, I said so far, almost 100 days. So they've been on strike a lot longer than the actors, because the actors just went on strike in July 14th. And what's, I think another thing is too, like when you think of like actors and stuff, I think a lot of people think like huge A-list stars that are making like bank, like making ridiculous amounts of money. But the reality is like...
it's also everybody else.
Yeah, like a huge...
It's the little people too.
Yeah, like a huge majority of like the guild and stuff, like they're not making that much money. They're barely making anything. And they also have those really low residual checks too of like 3 cents for like one of their huge shows they've been on forever. And which is something so interesting to realize too, is that like, you know, like you might think like they're super famous because they're on your like favorite TV show and stuff, but they might not be making actually that much more than you are, if anything. And they're struggling to work in their job too. They're actual human beings trying to do their daily jobs when you might see them around town somewhere, like.
Mm-hmm.
And what's specifically interesting too with the actors being on strike is that with so many of them not actually being these huge A-list stars that get millions and billions of dollars per episode of whatever show they're on or whatever movie, is that like they either like can't even afford their own health insurance or are not even considered to be even eligible because they don't even make enough money to even have health insurance because they're getting paid so little. Like, that's sad.
And like right now we have to have health insurance. You can't not have health insurance.
Yeah. And just trying to, you know, put a little bit of more of that humanistic side to this situation, and that you might think, well, it's just the entertainment industry. Everybody makes money and stuff. Like, why do we care? Well, as you can see, like...
well, the entertainment industries are like the biggest industries in the world.
Yeah. And they are fighting for the everyday person, and these groups are on strike because they want to have better for everybody, not just now, but for the future of the industry.
The future. Yeah. What happens right now with all of that, like, that could greatly determine the quality of entertainment that we enjoy for years and years and years. And the longer that they're forced to hold out on that, it could create a new terrible norm for how we entertain ourselves in the world, just in general.
Yeah.
Because whatever, because right now, lots of those studios, well, they have movies to fall back on. Well, they're already done. So we'll just release them when we release them. We'll make all that money off of that. And that's fine for them. But they'll hit a point where, like, well, crud, all these movies we had, like, they're not going to get filmed because they're not getting written. And then they're not going to be making that money anymore. So, but they'll find a way. They will find a way to cover for it. They'll make whatever they have to make, whatever god-awful nonsense that they can come up with, just to put something out there that people will pay for and watch. And that could be a very slippery slope into the quality that we enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Now, because these groups are on strike, like the writers are on strike, so like nobody's writing anything, nobody's working on new scripts, nobody's revising anything, there shouldn't be anything in production. With the actors, you may have seen some things, I don't know, because there's been things online about like certain actors are working during this time, but they're legally working because some of these smaller independent studios that aren't part of this big conglomerate have agreed to the terms that the AMPTP won't agree to for those higher pays, for those certain restrictions. So like it's interesting because they're like turning to these smaller independent film companies and stuff because they're like, yeah, we respect you guys as artists, like we will give you what you deserve. And so you might think, well, how are these people working? That's because of that situation, but that's because they're agreeing to those terms, which these terms realistically, like, they're not insane. They're not insane at all.
They're making them sound like they're insane.
Yeah.
But they're not.
No. When you see who's in charge of these bigger studios and stuff, and you see how much money they make, not everybody is making anywhere near what they're making, or even a small percentage of what they're making. Them and their like 50 yachts, they could feed all the writers. Like, it's just crazy. But
an excess of wealth can be a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of like a little bit of overview of the situation. Just wanted to share some of that information. So our listeners, if you're not super familiar with it or anything, just wanted to state what's going on with us as a podcast and why we're not going to be talking about some movies or TV shows for the time being. And I mean,
because gosh, we have a list of movies and TV shows through the end of the year that we really wanted to talk about.
Yes.
But they've been put on the shelf for now.
Yes.
So bear with us.
Yes, yeah. But we'll still be releasing we'll still be releasing episodes if we're just not covering
we still have the rest of the year all planned out for you.
Yes.
It just won't be movies and TV shows.
Yeah. But if you want more information on any of the strikes happening, I suggest you either go to like the WGA's websites, and then you can also go to SAG's website. And because there have been some information coming out recently, like just this past Friday, the AMPTP did reach out to the Writers Guild, and they were like, hey, we want to meet to have a discussion about potentially having a discussion. So they met, and they agreed that they might, the AMPTP might consider going back to like the table with a different deal. So it was a really ridiculous way to say have a discussion about having a discussion, but we might see something in the coming months, but I think it's going to be a while before anything is decided, because I haven't seen an official word yet, but it's likely that the WGA and SAG-AFTRA might be like, we're not gonna be happy until like there's a deal for both of them type thing, like standing together as one in the industry. Change for all. So
as they all should.
Yes, but I think that's all I have about that. So any other final words?
No, not really. You got it.
Cool. And so as always, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to our podcast. Share it with a friend. We're on all the social media, including that thing that's probably not called Twitter anymore. Who knows what it is by now, but we're still on Facebook and Instagram at Pod Demastered.
Hey, and if anybody else, if you're using like any of the other replacement apps for Twitter, let us know where you're at and if you'd like to see us on those platforms as well. Because we've been eyeballing it, but we're just not sure yet.
Yes. Or if you want us to start up a Discord, let us know if you'd rather just communicate on
We'd be
Discord.
happy to make a Discord.
Yes.
We make one little happy family, so.
Yes, for sure.
If you would join if we make one, let us know.
Yes, indeed. And then also, you can also send us an email as well and let us know your thoughts about anything. You can send us an email at demasteredpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thanks so much for listening to this episode, and we hope you tune in to the next one.
Peace.
See ya.